The rain had been relentless all afternoon, drumming against the glass walls of Victor Harlan's corner office high above the city. The 48-year-old real estate magnate was signing off on yet another multi-million-dollar deal when his private line rang. No one had that number except his personal assistant, his lawyer, and his ex-wife. He frowned, sliding the sleek phone across the desk. "Victor Harlan," he said sharply. A small, trembling voice came through the line. "Daddy!" Victor froze. The word felt misplaced, almost offensive in its absurdity. "Who is this?" he demanded. "It's me," the girl said, her voice thin and quivering. "Mummy is. Mummy's gone, she's dead." Victor straightened in his leather chair, a flash of irritation cutting through his confusion. "Listen, you must have the wrong number. I don't have a daughter." Silence, then a soft, wet sniffle. "You do," she whispered. "And you promised you'd always come if we needed you. Please, you have to come now." The phone went dead. Victor sat there staring at the silent receiver. He had been called many things in his life. Opportunist, genius, ruthless. But Daddy was not one of them. His only marriage to Lila Ross had ended a decade ago without children. She had vanished from his life with a venomous goodbye and an unshakable grudge. And yet the voice had been so real, so desperate. Minutes later, curiosity, or something deeper, drove him to trace the call. His assistant returned with an address scrawled on a yellow slip. "An apartment complex on the east side," she said. "The number was registered to a prepaid phone. Belongs to a woman named Lila Ross." Victor's pulse stuttered. The east side was a world away from the penthouses and glass towers he knew. He arrived 30 minutes later, his sleek black sedan looking painfully out of place amid cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Apartment 3B's door was ajar. He pushed it open slowly. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something metallic. The living room was dim, a single lamp casting a golden halo over a small figure sitting cross-legged on the threadbare carpet. She was 7, maybe 8, pale cheeks streaked with tears, big, wary brown eyes fixed on him. "You came," she said softly, as if she had doubted he would. Victor hesitated, his hand tightening on the doorframe. "Where's your mother?" The girl didn't move. Her lips trembled. "She's in the bedroom." Against his better judgment, he stepped inside. The place was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. He reached the bedroom door, and there, on the bed, lay Lila Ross. Her skin was waxy, her lips tinged blue. Victor's throat tightened. He hadn't seen her in 10 years, and now she was nothing but stillness. A faint sound behind him made him turn. The girl had followed, clutching the doorway. "She said you'd come," the child murmured. "She said you'd know what to do." Victor swallowed hard. "What's your name?" She looked up at him with eyes that held an uncanny mix of innocence and defiance. "Clara," she said. Then, after a beat, "Clara Harlan." The name hit him like a punch. His knees felt unsteady. Before he could speak, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway outside, multiple pairs growing louder. Clara's small hand gripped his. "They're coming," she whispered. "Who?" Victor asked. Her answer was barely a breath. "The people who hurt Mummy." Victor's instincts sharpened instantly. He'd been in enough boardroom ambushes to recognize the feel of a tightening noose. But this wasn't a hostile takeover. This was something far darker. He guided Clara back into the living room, his eyes darting to the front door. The footsteps were now on the stairwell, heavy and deliberate. Whoever they weren't here for polite conversation. "Is there another way out?" he asked quickly. Clara shook her head, her small fingers tightening around his. "Only the back window in the kitchen, but it's stuck." Victor's jaw clenched. He moved fast, checking the kitchen, yanking at the window frame. It groaned, but didn't give. Behind him, the front door creaked. The intruders had reached the landing. Clara's breathing quickened. "Daddy, don't call me that," he snapped reflexively. though the word now felt more like a shield than an insult. He didn't know what she was to him. Not yet, but she was a child. And Lila's child. And Lila had died with his name still somehow tied to hers. The front door rattled. A male voice muttered something low, followed by the metallic click of a lockpick. Victor spotted the narrow hallway closet. He opened it, pushed aside coats, and crouched down. "In," he ordered. Clara's eyes widened. "No, in. Now." She obeyed, curling up into the shadowy space. Victor shut the door most of the way, leaving a thin sliver of light for her. The lock gave a final pop. The front door swung open. 3 men stepped inside, 2 tall, broad-shouldered, the third wiry and restless. They moved with a certain economy of motion, the kind Victor had seen in men who didn't fear consequences. One of them kicked the door shut behind them. The wiry one sniffed the air and smirked. "She's here. I can smell the perfume. Bedroom first," said the taller man. Victor's mind raced. If they found Clara, this wouldn't end with questions. He glanced toward the kitchen. No escape. His eyes landed on a heavy crystal vase on the coffee table. The men reached the bedroom. A low curse followed. "Dead. She was supposed to stay breathing until he got here." Another growled. Victor's stomach turned. Until he got here, they'd been expecting him. He tightened his grip on the vase, his pulse roaring in his ears. The wiry man stepped back into the living room, scanning the space. His gaze swept over the closet door. Victor moved before he thought, swinging the vase in a brutal arc. It connected with a sickening crack. The wiry man went down hard, blood spreading beneath his head. The other 2 thundered back into the room. Victor dropped the shattered vase and lunged toward the closet. "Run," he barked. Clara burst out, darting toward the kitchen as Victor intercepted the first man. A punch slammed into his ribs, stealing his breath, but adrenaline kept him upright. He shoved the attacker into the coffee table, buying Clara a few seconds. The second man grabbed her by the arm just before she reached the kitchen. Clara screamed. Something primal tore through Victor. He charged, slamming his shoulder into the man's side, breaking his grip. "Go!" he roared. Clara scrambled to the kitchen window. Victor yanked her up onto the counter. She wriggled through the narrow opening, dropping into the alley below. The taller man lunged again, but Victor caught him with a desperate swing of his fist. Pain flared through his knuckles. Through the shattered window glass, Victor saw Clara's small figure sprinting down the alley, and then stopping suddenly. A black SUV was blocking the exit. Its tinted window rolled down. A woman's voice called softly, almost coaxingly. "Clara, come here." Clara froze. Her head turned, her face pale in the streetlight. Victor shouted, but the words caught in his throat as the SUV's door began to open. The woman stepped out of the SUV with an unsettling calm. Her heels clicked lightly against the wet pavement, her tailored coat untouched by the rain. She was tall, with hair the color of polished ebony, and eyes that assessed Clara the way a jeweler inspects a flawless stone. Victor's knuckles still throbbed from the fight inside, but his focus locked on the scene in the alley. "Clara," the woman said again, her tone like silk over steel. "You're safe now. Come with me." Clara's gaze darted between her and the apartment window where Victor stood, bleeding and breathless. "I don't know you," she said, her voice trembling. The woman's lips curved in a faint smile. "Oh, but I know you. Your mother told me everything." Victor's gut twisted. He climbed through the window, dropping into the alley. The moment his shoes hit the ground, 2 men in dark coats stepped out from the shadows near the SUV. Their stances were casual, but their eyes were fixed on him. "Back away, Mr. Harlan," the woman called, her voice never rising. "This doesn't concern you." Victor took a step forward anyway. "It concerns me if you're trying to take her." "She's not yours," the woman replied smoothly. "And she's not safe with you?" Rain dripped from the edge of Victor's hairline, running into his eyes. He didn't blink. "Who are you?" The woman's smile didn't falter. "Someone who can give Clara a life her mother couldn't. A life you wouldn't." Clara shook her head, tears starting again. "No," Mommy said. She stopped abruptly, as if remembering she wasn't supposed to say more. The woman crouched slightly, extending her hand. "Clara, your mother made me promise I'd find you if something happened to her. She wouldn't want you with him. She told me what he did." Victor's pulse hammered. "She's lying, Clara. Don't." "Enough." The woman's voice cut through the rain like a blade. She nodded once to the two men flanking her. They moved forward. Victor stepped in front of Clara. "You'll have to go through me." One of the men smirked. "We were hoping you'd say that." The fight was brief, but vicious. Victor ducked a swing, drove his elbow into one man's jaw, but the other caught him in the side, forcing the air from his lungs. Clara screamed as the taller man reached for her again. A flash of blue and red lit the alley mouth, sirens getting closer. The woman's smile tightened. Another time, she signaled to her men. They retreated with swift precision, slipping back into the SUV. The engine roared, and in seconds they were gone, the taillights vanishing into the rain. Victor staggered, clutching his ribs, as Clara ran to him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, trembling so hard he could feel it through his soaked shirt. "Who was she?" he asked, his voice rough. Clara buried her face in his coat. Mommy called her the collector. The sirens were almost on top of them now, and Victor knew they had seconds before questions would start. Questions he couldn't answer yet. "Clara," he said quietly, "what does the collector want with you?" Clara looked up at him, her eyes wide and frightened. Her answer was a single, chilling word. "My inheritance." The flashing lights bathed the alley in jolts of red and blue, bouncing off the slick brick walls. Two patrol officers approached, their boots splashing in shallow puddles. Victor forced his breathing steady. He couldn't afford to look like a man who'd just fought two strangers over a child he wasn't even supposed to have. One officer, young and skeptical, scanned the scene. "Sir, we got a disturbance call. Possible assault. You want to tell me what's going on here?" Victor's eyes flicked to Clara. She stood half behind him, clutching the hem of his coat. He put on the voice that had closed countless million-dollar deals, controlled, calm, unyielding. "Two men broke into an apartment upstairs. The woman who lives there, she's dead. I was trying to protect the girl." The officer's brow furrowed. "And who is the girl?" Victor hesitated a fraction too long. Clara's grip tightened. "She's my daughter," he said finally, the lie tasting strange on his tongue. The younger officer exchanged a look with his partner, then pulled out his radio to call it in. "We'll need statements from both of you at the precinct," the older one said. Victor nodded, though the idea of losing control of the situation made his gut twist. As they walked Clara toward the cruiser, he bent down to her level. "You don't say a word about the collector," he whispered. Clara's eyes were glassy, but she nodded. At the station, after an hour of repetitive questions, the officers finally let them go with instructions to stay in touch. Victor ushered Clara to his car. Rain streaked down the windshield as he pulled away, the city lights blurring in the wet glass. Once they were moving, he said, "Start talking." "What inheritance?" Clara's voice was small but steady. "Mommy had something. She said it was worth more than money. She told me never to tell anyone but you." Victor gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Why me?" she said. "You'd understand because it used to be yours, too." The words sent a cold ripple through him. "What does that mean?" Clara dug into the pocket of her damp coat and pulled out a small, worn leather pouch. She handed it to him. Inside was a key, heavy, old-fashioned, with strange etchings along the shaft. "She said it opens a place no one else knows about," Clara whispered. "And that's where the inheritance is." Victor turned the key over in his palm. The etchings weren't decorative. They were symbols, familiar ones. He'd seen them once before, more than 20 years ago, carved into the stone of a hidden vault beneath an abandoned estate his family had owned. That estate had burned to the ground, or so he'd thought. "Clara, did your mother ever take you somewhere outside the city? Somewhere old, maybe in the woods?" Clara's eyes darkened. "Once, a big house with no lights. She said it was where she and you made a promise. But we didn't stay long. She said people were watching." Victor's pulse quickened. "When was this?" "2 weeks ago." Headlights flared in the rear-view mirror, bright, closing fast. Victor's stomach sank. The vehicle behind them wasn't passing. He pressed the accelerator. The car matched his speed. "Clara," he said, his voice low but urgent, "hold on." The other vehicle surged forward, slamming into the back of his car with a jolt that snapped her head forward. Clara screamed. Victor fought to keep control as the rain-slicked road blurred under the tires. The pursuing car rammed them again. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a silhouette in the driver's seat, a familiar shape of hair pulled into a severe knot. A collector had found them again, and this time she wasn't alone. 2 more sets of headlights flared to life ahead, blocking the road. Victor's mind raced. There was no way through, unless he risked everything. He gritted his teeth, tightened his grip on the wheel, and aimed straight for the smallest gap between the 2 vehicles. The collector's car surged from behind. The road narrowed. Clara's terrified whisper broke the pounding silence. "Daddy, they're not going to let us live." Victor didn't answer Clara. His foot slammed the accelerator to the floor, the engine roaring in protest. Rain sprayed up from the tires as the 2 vehicles ahead loomed larger, steel barricades in the night. The gap between them was barely wider than his car. The collector's SUV closed in from behind, her headlights a blinding wall of white. "Hold on!" Victor shouted. He wrenched the wheel, angling the car toward the sliver of space. Metal screamed as the side mirror clipped one of the blocking vehicles. They burst through, fishtailing into the open road beyond. Shouts echoed behind them, followed by the revving of engines. Victor swerved onto a narrow, unlit side road he remembered from years ago, a service lane that wound through the outskirts of the city. The wet blacktop reflected only the faint glow of his taillights. For several minutes there was nothing but the sound of the engine and Clara's shallow breaths. Then in the rearview mirror a pair of headlights reappeared. "They won't stop," Clara whispered. "They will," Victor said, though his voice carried no certainty. He pushed the car harder, the road turning from cracked asphalt to gravel. Ahead, through the skeletal silhouettes of bare trees, he saw a shape rise from the darkness, a wrought iron gate, half swallowed by weeds and rust. The Harlan estate. It looked like the fire had never touched it, though ivy and decay had claimed most of its walls. The gates were chained, but the padlock was old, brittle. Victor spun the wheel, bumping the car hard against the chain until it snapped. The gates groaned open just wide enough for them to slip through. Inside, the gravel drive wound toward the main house, a looming corpse of stone and shadow. Victor parked beneath the shelter of the collapsed east wing. Clara clutched the key. "Is this the place?" Victor nodded. "Stay close." They hurried through the hollow shell of the mansion, the air thick with dust and the scent of rot. His memory guided him to the library, a room of charred shelves and collapsed beams. Beneath one of the floorboards, hidden under a rotted rug, was a trapdoor. Victor knelt, prying it open. Cold air rose from the darkness below. A narrow stone staircase spiraled down into the earth. The collector's engines roared in the distance. "Go!" Victor urged. Clara descended, the key clutched in her small fist. At the bottom, the passage ended at a massive iron door carved with the same strange symbols as the key. Clara slid it into the lock. It turned with a deep, grinding click. The door swung inward. revealing a chamber lit only by the faint glimmer of something piled on the floor. Gold coins, jeweled relics, stacks of brittle documents sealed with red wax. Clara's eyes widened. "Is this all ours?" Victor scanned the room, his chest tight. "This was my family's." "Your family's? It's more than money. It's titles, deeds, control over properties no one even knows exist. Whoever has this controls a lot more than land." The footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind them. Slow, deliberate. The collector stepped into the chamber, flanked by two of her men. Her gaze swept the room, then settled on Clara. "You see, child, this is why you're worth more than you understand, and why he's been lying to you." Clara looked up at Victor, confusion in her eyes. "Lying?" Victor's throat tightened. "I never lied. I didn't know about you. But now that I do, I won't let them take you, or this." The collector's smile was razor-thin. "Then you'll die here." She lifted her hand. One of her men raised a gun, and Clara stepped forward. "Stop," she said. Her voice, though small, carried a weight that froze the room. The collector tilted her head. "And why would I? Because," Clara said, her chin lifting, "I'm the only one who knows which piece in this room is worth more than all the rest. And if you shoot him, I'll destroy it." The collector's eyes narrowed, calculating. Victor stared at her, realization dawning. "Clara, what is it?" She didn't answer him. Instead, she pointed toward a small, dust-covered wooden box tucked behind a pile of gold. The collector's gaze flicked to it, and in that split second, Victor moved. He slammed the heavy iron door shut, the lock snapping into place with a deafening clang. The collector and her men were trapped outside. Victor turned to Clara, chest heaving. "We need to leave, now." But Clara shook her head, still staring at the wooden box. "Not yet. You need to see what's inside. It's the reason Mummy called you." Victor lifted the box. Inside, wrapped in a strip of faded silk, was a single black envelope. On it, in Lila's looping handwriting, were the words, "For Victor Harlan, the truth about Clara." Victor's fingers trembled as he unfolded the brittle silk. The black envelope felt heavier than gold, as if it carried the weight of years stolen from him. Clara watched, her small hands knotted together, her eyes wide with something between hope and fear. He slid a finger beneath the seal. The paper cracked softly, the sound echoing in the cold chamber. Inside was a single photograph. Lila, younger, smiling faintly, and holding a newborn wrapped in a white blanket. Scrawled across the bottom, in Lila's unmistakable hand, were 6 words that punched the air from his lungs. "She's yours. Protect her at all costs." Victor's knees weakened. He looked at Clara, and in her trembling smile he saw the truth he'd been too blind to imagine. But before he could speak, the iron door shuddered violently. From the other side came the collector's voice, low and venomous. "Open this door, Harlan, or I will take her blood instead." The chamber fell silent except for the pounding in Victor's ears, because now he knew. The gold, the deeds, the power, none of it mattered. Clara was the inheritance, and they would kill the world to take